Welcome to another Yorkton story, our look at Yorkton's past and present. My name is Dick DeRyck. Our podcasts are available on our website, yorktonstories.ca, where you will also find photos, links, and other information associated with each podcast topic when available. In many cases, you can not only hear the stories, you can also see and read about the podcast topics. We can also be found on all major podcast directories. Search for Yorkton Stories, and you will find us. This podcast is presented by Harvest Meats and Grain Millers, both here in Yorkton. We appreciate their support from the early days of this podcast and the support of others who have encouraged us in our efforts to preserve slices of Yorkton history. When Gene Krepekavich, longtime Yorkton Terrier, booster, volunteer, and club president for 6 seasons, wrote the history of the first 25 years of the Junior Terrier hockey team, published in 1997, he starts with the 1972-73 season. As Gene wrote, June 25th, 1972, will be remembered by many as the beginning. Well, no, it wasn't the beginning of Junior Terrier hockey in Yorkton, actually, which is what we look at in this podcast. But it was indeed the start of the current stretch of Junior A hockey here, a history that now spans 54 continuous years. It was on that date the Yorkton Terrier Hockey Club was officially accepted as the 11th member of the Saskatchewan Amateur Junior Hockey League at its annual meeting in Regina. But for the second time. That first season, 1972-73, under coach Jerry James, was not stellar. The Terriers bowed out to the Prince Albert Raiders in the Northern semifinals. It did, however, produce players whose names are still remembered by longtime Terrier fans. Local boys like Barry Marianchuk, Garth Bodie, and Tom Bast, as well as Brett McCraco from Wadena and Norm Garbett. What few, if any, remember now, and what was not recorded by Gene, and not included in more recent official histories of junior hockey in Yorkton, is that there was an earlier team, also known as the Yorkton Terriers, which also played in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. And on it was one player who still lives in Yorkton, and who had a pretty decent hockey career back then, by the name of Merve Kuryluk. The year was 1955. The Moose Jaw Canucks had played in the Western Canada Junior Hockey League the previous 2 seasons, in 1953-54 and 54-55, along with the Regina Pats, Lethbridge Native Sons, Edmonton Oil Kings, and Medicine Hat Tigers. The 1954-55 season was not a great one. They finished dead last that year, with only 5 wins in 40 league games. Things got worse that summer of 1955 when the Moose Jaw Arena, their home rink, burned down. And that spelled the end of the team having no place to play, since it would be a few years until a new arena was built. In stepped the owner of the Medicine Hat Tigers, one William Dickinson Hunter, better known back then as Red Hunter or Wild Bill Hunter. His association with hockey ownership was in its relative infancy. It would be another 16 years before Hunter would join up with others to be instrumental in the start of the renegade World Hockey Association, which competed for players and fans with the long-established National Hockey League. Hunter morphed his junior Oil Kings team into the Alberta Oilers of the WHA. The next year, they became the Edmonton Oilers, as they still are today. But before that, he owned the Medicine Hat Tigers, and in the fall of 1955, he put together a team consisting of some of his Tigers, plus the cream of the crop of the now defunct Moose Jaw team, and brought them to Yorkton. They took on the Terrier name and were accepted into the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, creating considerable excitement locally because there was no senior team that year. The Senior League had folded. On the new team was Merve Kuryluk, who had played in Moose Jaw the previous year. He was born and raised on a farm just east of Yorkton and was a top prospect to play at higher levels. Also on the team was Jerry Bullets, who learned his hockey in the Yorkton Minor Hockey Organization. Another player of the Moose Jaw team, who would later become well known to Yorkton hockey fans, was Barry Ross, but he chose not to come to Yorkton. He did move here some years later to play senior hockey with the Terriers, and he spent the rest of his life here. A local board was organized, including influential members of the Yorkton community. Elmer Lang was the president. Dr. Steve Yahelnitsky was the vice president, and directors included businessmen Jack Parr, Amos Border, and Bill Korb. The local news media were also on board. Ken Mayhew of the Yorkton Enterprise and a well-known booster of all things Yorkton wrote in the program booklet that the 1955-56 season, quote, ushers in a new age of hockey for Yorkton. Youth has triumphed once again, as is right in a young man's country, end of quote. Junior hockey, he opined, is the fastest, cleanest, and best variety of all. Quoting Ken again, wherever junior hockey is played, the fans attend because here they see a never-say-die effort on the part of every he-blooded boy propelling a puck. For hockey's sake, I hope this constant, undeclared war between Yorkton and Melville never ceases. And above all, I hope fans will patronize our boys here and boys of other teams elsewhere, so hockey, our great national game, will never die. End of quote. On the airways, CJGX Radio had just hired a new sports reporter in August of 1955, an 18-year-old from Melville by the name of Linus Westberg. He spent almost 3 years at the radio station before making the jump to the new television station, CKOS-TV, in June of 1958. One of the highlights of the Yorkton Terrier 1955-56 season was hosting the league All-Star Game Friday, January the 13th, 1956, a contest between the best players of the Terriers and Flin Flon Bombers on one team and the best of the Prince Albert Mintos and Humboldt Melfort Indians on the other team. The fifth team in the league, the Melville Millionaires, finished last in the league that year and were not represented. The All-Star Game was held in what was then the new arena on South Front Street, a former airport hangar moved in from the Yorkton Airport and considered a state-of-the-art hockey venue. The game and accompanying dinner at the Yorkton Hotel was attended by the who's who of hockey in Saskatchewan and far beyond, and Linus talked to a couple dozen of them for a half-hour sports show on CJGX, asking them not only about hockey, the players, and the game, but also eliciting comments from them on the fine new arena in which the game was being played. When the 1955-56 season ended, the Terriers were in third place with a record of 20 wins, 26 losses, and 2 ties. Flin Flon was at the top of the league, with Prince Albert in second place, 13 wins ahead of Yorkton. The Terriers edged out Humboldt Melfort for third, with the Melville Millionaires, only 8 wins, being the cellar dwellers. The end of that season, however, was also the end of the brief history of the first Yorkton Terrier junior hockey team. For reasons not quite clear but likely related to finances, the team folded and the players were dispersed in a draft that spring. Bill Hunter pulled up stakes and spent the next season with the Lacombe Rockets in Alberta, and eventually resurfaced as the owner of the Edmonton Oil Kings in 1968 and the subsequent founding of the World Hockey Association. Merve Kuryluk went on to play another 14 seasons, including being called up by the Chicago Blackhawks in 1961-62, before coming back home to Yorkton and the family farm to play with the senior Terriers and become the Labatt's brewery salesman in the area, a job he did for more than 2 decades. Linus Westberg was at the local television station for 29 and a half years, eventually as general manager, before going back into radio in Dauphin, Manitoba in 1987 as general manager of the station CKDM, before retiring to Red Deer, Alberta, where he and Ellen still live. Last year, while digging through a box of old documents, memorabilia, and artifacts that had over the years been given to the Yorkton Sports Hall of Fame, I ran across a tape cassette that said simply 1956 SJHL All-Star Game. That piqued my interest. I had it converted to a digital file, put on my headphones, and listened to 26 minutes of Linus talking to hockey folks at the All-Star Game, including such notable names as Cactus Jack Wills of Winnipeg Radio, the Chicago Blackhawks scout and former goalie Tiny Thompson, who was a 4-time Vezina Trophy winner, Bill Hunter, of course, sports broadcaster Lloyd Saunders, long the voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Gordon Jukes, who was then a member of the Canadian Amateur Hockey Association Board, Terrier President Elmer Lang, Dr. Steve Yahelnitsky, the Vice President of the Terriers, and many more. We talked with Merve and Linus about that mostly forgotten team, forgotten by many, but not by them. And we will hear some of the comments from those who Linus talked to, now 70 years ago. You were born and raised in Yorkton, and you started playing minor hockey here.
Hockey started really at public school level. We played at Burke and Simpson and Victoria, and we played in each open-air rink. And when we get into the playoffs, maybe we get into the closed rink once in a while. We'd be in school till 4, and we're on the ice at quarter after 4, carrying our equipment and running to the old rinks.
So that was a treat.
It was a treat. We had a lot of fun out in the open-air rinks, too, when we played. But
so Clarence Drake would have been around in that.
Yes, yeah. Those were the days. He was coaching, and it was Bantam, and it's a little different than now how it is with minor sports. I always kid my grandson playing. I said that when I was in Yorkton, we'd play Melville every year in the playoffs, beat them, we'd go to Regina, get beat, and our season was over.
So the Yorkton-Melville rivalry goes back a long ways. Yeah.
It does that, yeah.
So how did you get to Moose Jaw? Did they come and recruit you? How does that work?
Well, that was interesting. Yorkton's Mitro Presta and Larry Popine, of course, they played in Moose Jaw, so that had a bit of bearing on it, believe me. But I was pleased to know that 4 gentlemen from Moose Jaw came out to the farm and talked to my mom and dad. And they thought that was pretty impressive, and they said he'd like to go there. And I had a few other places I could have gone, but I chose to go to Moose Jaw.
How old were you?
17.
Finished school, or did you finish school there?
Grade 11.
Yeah.
I started taking some 12 in Moose Jaw, but it went by the wayside.
You played for them for...
The 1 year, and the rink burned down in Moose Jaw. And, of course, Yorkton was forming a team then. Bill Hunter was Medicine Hat. He was coaching the Medicine Hat team. And they got him, they recruited him, and he brought some players from the Hat. A few players from Moose Jaw came here, and the rest is filled out. And that's how Yorkton got its team.
What kind of coach was Bill Hunter?
Well, he was a player's coach in the sense that he played hard for him. He is a promoter. And I may say that a lot of the coaches were promoters. You talk back to Scotty Monroe, Legs Fraser, a goaltender who played for Canadian teams. No, those guys are all bringing people into the rink. That's what their main job was. Legs Fraser used to come out in the ice before the game with just a goal stick and a glove, and we'd have our warm-ups shooting at him. He's an old goaltender. And the people hated him.
You played the 1 year in Yorkton. Now, the fact that Yorkton had a junior team in 1955-56 is not well known. Everybody assumes that, that the Junior Terriers when they started was the first junior team here.
No, it's a way back. Let's face it. And the 1 year it went kind of quick. Crowds weren't bad. I don't know. It just wasn't feasible or what was, but I don't know the real story why Yorkton only went the 1 year.
Elmer Lang was the president of the team. It was all local guys that ran the executive.
Yeah.
They must have had some thought that this could be a go.
They were all businessmen. Dr. Yowell, the dentist, Jack Parr's in business. I don't know why it didn't go any longer. It might have been a tough winter weather-wise in the rink. But it was too bad.
So the year that the junior team was here, was there still also a senior team?
No, the league folded. And so that's why the junior team they started. It was a going thing. The Saskatchewan Junior League was going pretty good, but they were very good. I was treated very well. No complaints. It was a good year. We traveled by car. I took my dad's car a lot. That's how it was. I know we're in the playoffs in PA, and our one van didn't show up and didn't show up. And it stuck, and things like that happened, but it was happening for everybody.
Merv talks about life as a junior player in Moose Jaw and the Terrier training camp in the fall of 1955.
It was different then, of course. When you went and played for a junior team, the NHL sponsored that team, and you automatically belonged to that NHL team. There was no draft.
And Moose Jaw was the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah. And when I went there, that automatically made me Chicago property.
When you were playing junior hockey, did they pay you anything?
They paid a little bit, but not very much. When I went to Moose Jaw, you got to pay your room and board and stuff like that. So you're paid that, and a little bit of spending money, not too much. But if you're interested in playing, and it was enough, it got you going. We went to Lethbridge to train with Yorkton because we had no ice here. We had no artificial ice in Yorkton. So we didn't get ice until November normally. So we went to Lethbridge, Bill Hunter. That was his style, So we dry trained in Lethbridge and skated there and then came back. Melville had artificial ice.
You must be among the last of the survivors of that 55 team and some of those early teams. Do you hear from any of the guys?
Periodically you get a call from a player, but not in the last little while. Our old senior hockey club is pretty well gone. They're just Barry Sharp and Steve Kazicki left here and myself. But with that team, with senior hockey and juniors, closer friends, they're all passed away. And
I was looking at the player lineup for Moose Jaw Canucks the year before, in 54.
Okay.
And there was a guy on there, Barry Butch Ross.
Yep. Yeah.
And which is Barry Ross.
Yes.
Played with you guys. Yep. In the years that I was involved and covered senior hockey, I had never heard of him referred to as Butch. Sounds like the nickname didn't stick with him.
It was a nickname younger and junior. Somewhere along the way here, his nickname changed to Chuck. Butch was his nickname in Moose Jaw. And
you would have played with him for 1 year.
Yeah, he came here. He went to Calgary that year. He didn't play in Yorkton. But when he finished pro, he came to Yorkton.
Yeah.
But I played with him in the Moose Jaw. And that Marcetta that came here, he played for Hunter in Medicine Hat. Played with and against those guys.
Milan Marcetta.
Yeah.
He was a good player.
He was a good hockey player. Very good.
Who were the best players on that 55-56 team?
Stan Bodiak in one program he had written at one line in Yorkton, and Wayne Hicks and Billy Marcetta and myself. We all went into the NHL, which was something for one junior team that I'll be there.
Were you the only one from Yorkton originally on that
Jerry
team?
Bullets.
Bullets was on that team?
Yep.
In January of 1956, as we mentioned, Yorkton hosted the League All-Star Game. No doubt an effort on the part of the league to promote the league and the game of hockey in Yorkton. The All-Star Game was in Yorkton that year.
Yeah.
Linus Westberg, who you know, he had just started here. He started in Yorkton at GX 5 months before that game. He was 18 years old.
Okay.
And I had pictures of Linus 18 years old in a suit, and he looks no different than that he did 50 years later. And he interviewed a whole bunch of people. It looked like just about anybody who's who in hockey showed up for that All-Star team.
Yeah.
I imagine they were scouting.
Oh, yeah, there's scouts and there's management. The Western League was going at the time. Like Moose Jaw was in the Western League. And this is Saskatchewan Junior League. There was, of course, people from there looking at the crop of players in the Junior League to go move up.
The team disbanded at the end of the season,
Yeah.
and it seems like you mentioned, nobody seems to know exactly why, but obviously they didn't make a go of it. What happened to the team? What happened to the players?
Well, the league had a draft. Everybody got selected. Melville took me, and I went there, played there. And
how did that go over with the Yorkton people, your Yorkton friends? Because, I mean, the rivalry
took me to Christmas with that team, say, talk to me. Because it was all high school football and hockey right day one against Melville, so it wasn't that serious. But Melville treated me very well. But it was fun because there was lots of rivalry there.
Merve went on to play for Calgary and Saskatoon in the Western Hockey League, for Sault Ste. Marie in the Eastern Professional Hockey League, for the Buffalo Bisons of the American Hockey League, several games with the Chicago Blackhawks in 61-62, then Syracuse and St. Louis of the EPHL, back to Buffalo, and finally the Los Angeles Blades of the Western Hockey League. That's not a glamorous life. People think that professional hockey, it must be great.
It wasn't bad, in those days. Like, it was not flying around the world. You're on the bus all the time, which was not all that bad, but I enjoyed it. Played in good cities and had a lot of new people and friends. And the NHL, they're on the train too, and all night and sleepers and stuff. So it was just the way of the times more than anything.
Well, then you could probably get into a hockey game for $1 at the time.
Well, ironically, I've got a ticket from a Stanley Cup play in Chicago that were complimentary to us, and I kept one just for keepsake. And we had good seats in Chicago Stadium, 27,000 people. $5 was the ticket cost.
Which buys you half a hot dog these days.
But I never want to give it up because I tell the story to people, nobody'd believe you, but that's what it was.
Yeah. In the meantime, Merve and Dorothy were married in 1965. Merve decided that life in the minor pro leagues, which meant winters with much time away from home, not to mention moves between teams, was not the way to lead a married life. And at the end of the 1964-65 season, he called it quits. So you eventually gave up hockey, got married, and the two are connected.
Well, in a sense, yes. I got married, and I offered a pretty good job with Labatt's, and my time was pretty well over.
Chose to came back home.
Yeah, yes. Oh, yes. I at the farm. I had worked the farm all the time. I was playing hockey. I came back and worked the farm, and then eventually I took it over, and my dad retired, and I took over. So,
working for Labatt's, Merve continued to be involved in sports other than playing with the senior Terrier hockey team until it disbanded in 1972. He used his connections to bring high-profile speakers to the annual Kinsman Sportsman's Dinner, then a men-only event where the Yorkton Sportsman of the Year was named. He sponsored Ted Lindsay to be a speaker, and he brought Bill Hunter back to Yorkton, to name only a few. And he started the Blue Owl Golf Tournament at Deer Park, which for years was a premier men's tournament that attracted the best players from across the province, as well as a cohort of top young local players, the Gibson brothers, Arden Knoll, Tom Johnson, Mark Tom, Kevin Ryan, and others. Anyone locally who played golf was in the Blue Owl, including one Linus Westberg, then the sports director at CKOS CICC Television in Yorkton. The story is told that one year Linus was in the first foursome off the tee, and the first to putt out in his foursome, the first one to record a score that day. It was a par, apparently. Linus, I am told, is still proud of the fact that for a fleeting moment, he was the leader of that year's prestigious Blue Owl tournament. That was long after the SJHL All-Star Game in '56, which he covered as a rookie reporter. We talked to Linus about that game and his subsequent career in broadcasting. And we listen in on his interviews with some of the luminaries who were at that All-Star game, thanks to that long-lost tape about the long-lost junior hockey team that was the 1955-56 Yorkton Terriers.
Were you a sports guy in your youth?
I really was. It turned out this way. In the old senior days in 1951, Yorkton and Melville had one of the greatest rivalries that recorded in Saskatchewan. I used to be the stick boy. I used to have the key to the dressing room, where I could get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get the equipment washed. And that was like having the key to heaven.
For the millionaires.
That's right. So the nun said, why don't you go into law? And I says, no, I want to go into broadcasting. So we couldn't afford to go into law, but I was the stick boy, and I even did play-by-play from the bench during games where they told me to shut up. And from there on to at the age of 17, I went to CKCK in Regina. I hitchhiked there and applied for a job. Jim Krepekavich, a great guy, looked at me and said, you look 12, but you've got enthusiasm. Come back in 5 years. So I got a ride back to Melville, and then I got an appointment with CJGX. And one of the icons of CJGX history, Merve Kuryluk, he looked at me, he said, you look like the paper boy. I said, well, give me an edition. He said, okay, I'll give you the headlines. I said, no, I'll give you the headlines. I'll give you the sports scores. I'll give you the weathercast. I don't need any notes. Are you sure? I said, yep. Away we went. I didn't make a single mistake. And I remember his words, can you start on Monday? Well, it was the start of a career that has brought so many benefits.
You were recording a show that Shepard Adamson was sponsoring from the All-Star game. In 26 minutes, I think you talked to 25 guys, one after the other.
That's right. Of course, Bill Hunter, he was on stage all the time. And he was a real character. They had people that were selling tickets for a car donated by one of the car dealers in Yorkton.
Amos Border.
Amos Border, yep. And it was a Studebaker.
Yep.
And of course, they sold a lot of tickets. And Bill Hunter kept track, but the car, I don't think, was raffled off. So there was a little controversy there. It was quite a year. The banquet, Merve Kuryluk was there, Vern Hall, and that Barry Sharp, who has been such a force. The juniors had many players, like Milan Marcetta went to the Leafs. But it was an occasion for me to get right in there and do the best I could, which was a baptism for so much of my start in the career.
Tiny Thompson, Bob Davidson, I mean, those were huge names in hockey, not only as scouts at the time, but as players before that.
Tiny Thompson, He was a big fella, but he took time. Another guy that was a legend in Saskatchewan in sports was Paul Hack. And he took me aside after it was all over. He said, you're getting off to a good start. If I can help you in any way, just give me a call. And so many did that. And it really showed me that there was a lot of goodness in a lot of people and the young guy trying to start out.
Yeah, a young guy who was 18 years old and looked like a paper boy.
That's right. That's right.
Over the years, you had an interesting relationship with Jerry James.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Now, the story, and I don't know the details, and that's why I'm asking you. There was a challenge issued for a boxing match between you and Jerry James.
You bet.
What was that about?
First of all, Jerry was an individual who expressed his opinion very strongly, but deep, he was kind and caring. When he came to Yorkton, I remember I did the banquet, and he was one of the guests, And I said, I'd like to introduce Jerry James. He's the newcomer in Yorkton, and he's the one that welcome wagon threw rocks at his house. And that got a big ovation. And then the next thing is, we used to do the hockey Terriers tonight every night after the Terrier game. And one game they're playing Melville, he's coaching Yorkton. And I thought he was coaching bad in the third period. And I told him that on the air. He slammed the mic down and walked away from me. He said, tomorrow you'll be fired. But I wasn't fired. And so we had a relationship that was pretty good. And even to his death, I talked to him 6 months, maybe 7 months before he passed on. He was a kind, caring soul. But anytime I had a chance to irritate him, I certainly would. They had this fella in Yorkton needed an operation, and it was expensive. So I challenged Jerry James to a boxing match. It was sold out at the Yorkton Arena, completely sold out. We raised, I think, around $3,000, and he took a couple of hits, but I took a couple of hits too, and thank God he didn't hit full. I had 6 teenagers, about 12 to 13, in the background behind the curtains. And after a couple of pensions and after a couple of rounds, well, I had a signal. And I had that signal, and these 6 came out with buckets of feathers and chocolate, and they poured it on them. And I was declared the winner.
What would you consider to have been the highlight of your career?
One of the highlights was going on so many trips around the world and finalizing a great trip for me that I tried so hard to get, a trip to the Masters. And I was sitting in Dauphin, Manitoba, one cold January, and I phoned my friend Merle Harmon, who I met during the World Series many times. He was so famous and so well and a great guy. I said, Merle, how do I get a ticket, a press ticket to the Masters? He said, Linus, do you know God? And I said, I think I do. That's the only way. But I'll give you the name of Martha Kay. At that time, she was a strong force at Augusta. And I sent her a long letter. And I said, you know, Martha, we are in cold weather, minus 30. I'd love to go to the Masters. And when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask the good Lord to give me 9 holes with Arnold Palmer. And that struck a chord with her. And she got me a press pass for the Masters.
And that's coming up on the weekend. Coming up.
Yep.
Yep. Do you follow sports on TV to this day?
Yes. Yep. Oh, yeah.
And who in particular?
Well, I'm so pleased the Montreal Canadiens made the playoffs. I am a rooter for the Jets. I like the NHL very much. I also like curling a lot. And it brings back good memories of so much that went on in all these years that this ancient relic has enjoyed. And when I think of Yorkton, I think of good people and good times.
Linus talked to Jack Wells, Cactus Jack as he was known. He was the guest speaker at the All-Star Dinner, which was held before the game at the Yorkton Hotel. He also talked to Tiny Thompson. Tiny Thompson was the Chicago Blackhawks scout. He spent 12 seasons with Boston and Detroit. He was the first NHL goaltender to catch the puck with his hand to make a save, and he helped popularize that technique using gloves that were smaller than those of other players. He was also, in 1935-36 season, the first goaltender to get an assist by intentionally passing the puck with his stick to a fellow player. He was an innovator as a goalie in the 30s and into the 40s. And Bill Hunter, coach of the Yorkton Terriers.
What did you think of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League All-Star game?
What impressed me was the fact that all those kids playing out there on Friday night had a good turn of speed, and I like speed in in any sport, and especially in hockey.
What did you think of the big crowd out there tonight, Jack?
I don't know what the house was.
2,035.
And I don't know what the rink seats, but it looked to me as though it was pretty well packed. I noticed up in one corner there was a few empty seats. They may have been sitting wide because it was kind of a balmy night, but you had a real good turnout. And I'd like to say this, that I've been to a lot of sports dinners in the last few years, and I can honestly and sincerely say this, Linus, that this one here in Yorkton has been one of the nicest, one of the finest, and without exception, the best organized sportsman's dinner that I've been to.
Well, we're very glad to have you here, Jack. Thank you very much. Jack Wells of Winnipeg, a well-known sportcaster. Here's Tiny Thompson, the chief scout of the Chicago Blackhawks and a four-time winner of the Vezina Trophy. What did you think of the game tonight?
I enjoyed it very much. As Jack said a few moments ago, there was a lot of speed in the game. It was wide open, of course. But I thought it was good. That's good for the fans. We're glad to see the 2,035 people there. I think when the league starts over again, it should create a lot of interest.
Thank you very much, Tiny Thompson, for your comments and statements. Hello, Bill Hunter. How are you?
Fine, Linus.
This is the fiery redhead that's done so much to promote the junior hockey here in Yorkton. And what did you think of the proceedings? The first time such a classic has been held in Yorkton, the first time we've had a banquet, the first time we've had so many celebrities, and I believe this marks, many notable firsts in Yorkton's history as far as the hockey city is concerned.
Yes, Linus, I think everybody was very pleased with the proceedings. We had a good crowd. We had a very fine show. I think the banquet was a big success, and I'm sure that everybody enjoyed themselves. Jack Wells, our guest speaker, I think he did a stand-up job. And all in all, I thought the game was very good. I was very pleased, of course, with the showing of our Yorkton Terriers and Mel Marcetta getting 4 goals. That makes us doubly pleased.
And what about the big crowd, Bill? How about having that the rest of the season?
Oh, it'd be wonderful. And Linus said it's good to see a crowd in the rink, and of course that helps make a hockey game. I think everybody's thoroughly enjoyed themselves.
I sure think so, Bill. Thank you very much.
Bob Davidson, he was the Leafs chief scout and is considered by many to have been one of the best hockey scouts of all time. He was credited with building the Toronto Maple Leafs teams during the 1960s. Those teams dominated the NHL by winning the Stanley Cup 4 times within a 6-year period. The Leafs could use him now.
Here's Bob Davidson, the chief scout for the Toronto Maple Leafs. How are you, Bob?
I'm fine, Linus.
What did you think of the game tonight?
Well, I thought it was a very good game. It was certainly wide open, a lot of nice goals scored, and the kids were really skating.
And what about the banquet and the big crowd we had?
Well, I thought the banquet was very well handled. It's good to come up here and meet the various scouts. I'm from Toronto, and I met Tiny Thompson, which I hadn't seen for about a year, and I see Dennis Ball here and Scotty Monroe, and it's good to talk over old times.
Bob, what did you think? How do you think the towns Melville and Yorkton are progressing as first-year junior clubs?
Well, I think they're doing very well. Yorkton is going to be in the playoffs. They got the nucleus of that Moose Jaw team, which helped them out, and Melville has a little tough sledding. They've got the kickback from the other clubs that players that they couldn't use, but they got a hard-working executive in Melville, and I know that they're going to come up with a good hockey club next year.
Bobby Kirk was the winning coach of the All-Star game. He was the coach of the Flin Flon Bombers.
Hello, Bobby Kirk.
Linus, how are you?
How did you enjoy the game? The coach of the winning team that won 12-6.
I thought it was a very fine game, Linus. It was a typical crowd pleaser, very wide open. There wasn't any too much body checking, but I thought all the boys put on a wonderful show. In fact, the whole evening was a grand success, I'd say. The banquet was fine, wonderful turnout. It was an excellent turnout for the hockey game, and I think this sort of a thing out here will make the fans in this district realize just what we have, and I hope they'll all turn out in great numbers.
How does it feel to be the coach of the winning team, Bob?
Well, we're always pleased to be on a winner, Linus.
Thank you very much, Bobby Kirk, the coach of the second All-Star team that won the game tonight at the Yorkton Arena, 12-6.
Lloyd Saunders, a broadcaster in Regina, voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and also Bill Quinn, who was with the Prince Albert Mintos, and both of them comment on the style of hockey, which was changing, and not everybody was happy about it.
We're going to try to get a hold of Lloyd Saunders now. And Lloyd, I hope we don't bother you too much. How do you feel after the big game and the big crowd, the banquet, and just about everything held in Yorkton today?
Well, Linus, I was just talking with Bill Quinn here, and ironically enough, I suppose we'll be accused of insubordination, Bill, here, because we usually are talking hockey, but I was just telling Bill about talking with Gorgeous George last night in Regina.
That's the wrestler, I believe.
That's the wrestler, and he's the fellow that couldn't make my radio show last evening because he had to have his hair done. But he's a great showman, and of course, making lots of money at it. Linus, I'd like to say this about hockey, if I may. First of all, I'd like to say that I was impressed with the way the Yorkton people, Ken Mayhew and Bill Hunter and all the rest of you, staged the dinner. It was a wonderful affair as far as I was concerned. I've been to a lot of $10 plate dinners and so on, but I thought this one was one of the best. On top of that, I would like to congratulate you on your rink. I haven't had the opportunity of seeing hockey played in your new rink, and it's certainly a far cry from the Front Street Arena, I believe it was, when I played here back about, well, that's getting a long ways ago, Bill, about 15 years ago. And the other thing I'd like to mention, Linus, if I may, is the fact that we have such a great collection of sports celebrities down here today.
That sure is wonderful. I think it's the first time such sporting notables have ever been collected all together here in Yorkton.
I think you're right. I wish to heavens I had your microphone now, Linus, because I could do a pretty good show here myself as you're doing now, getting all the men to speak. And I think everybody's saying that something's wrong with hockey, and that everything is wrong with hockey, and all the different quotations. I feel that hockey isn't like it used to be, naturally, because I think I'm inducted into that league of criticism. But I was noticing only one thing out there tonight, and I think I was talking with Bob Davidson, yourself, and some of the fellows earlier, about forwards not moving in and shooting that puck earlier. I think that if they had move in about 8 or 10 feet or 15 feet in front of that net and would shoot the puck, it would certainly make it much more difficult for the goaltender to save. And therefore, I feel shooting is a prime requisite of our game. Now, I know that there's a lot of criticism about hockey. As you know, Linus, you've probably criticized it yourself. But if we have future affairs like this, where the hockey moguls can get together, and the radio men and the newspaper men and the television men, I think it only stimulates good interest. And Linus, I think you know the gentleman to my left here, Mr. Bill Quinn. But Bill, do you agree with me that you had the old Prince Albert Minnows up there a number of years ago, and Bill's looking younger than I am, I think, right now, Linus, than I am, but Bill...
That must be from your wrestling with Jack Wells, I believe.
Well, no, that's Jack Jacobs. Jack calls me Slippery, and I call him Indian Jack, so we sort of get back at one another that way. But, Bill, I think when you had Harvey Dodge and McQuarrie and Dundas and the boys, when they moved in, that's quite a few years ago, mind you.
We called that our $1 million hockey club.
And, Bill, those fellas shot. If you take a look at Richard's record from any season, you'll find that he gets goals from almost an impossible angle because he shoots. And I want you to, more or less, do you go along with my statement that players shot more?
To a degree. I do to this degree that in those days, of course, they had to carry the puck in. They couldn't throw it in the corner and do the bulldozing. That is the hockey of today that I don't like. I like the stick-handling hockey, and I think that's one of the things that drew our crowds in the days that you're referring to.
What about the red line, Bill? That should be abolished?
I think that all red things should be abolished. I do not think that we will get the kind of hockey that's pleasing to the public while we have the red line and shoot in the corner and the big fellow knocks the little fellow out.
Bill, we'll never personalize the game as much as we did then when we had the Elmer Pipers and the Dushaks and the Burks and the Davises and the Dundases and McPhee and everybody, will we?
That's what I'm referring to, and I'm referring to the game that I saw in Saskatoon when the Smoke Eaters played the Cornwall team in the playoffs. That was the prettiest hockey I ever saw, and these fellows from the Smoke Eater Club, as you remember, I forget the names now.
They're from Trail, weren't they? Trail Smoke Eaters, yeah.
They went down the ice talking to each other and passing the puck, and the Cornwall fellows figured they were going to take them out on heavy body checking, but when they started the body check, they weren't there. They had passed the puck and stepped out of the way.
Gordon Jukes was a member of the Canadian Amateur Hockey Association, executive in 1955. He was formerly from Melville, where he played hockey as a young man, and at one time was the owner of the Melville Advance weekly newspaper.
This fellow here, I believe everybody knows, Gordon Jukes, the past president of the SAHA and right now the second vice president of the CAHA. What did you think of the proceedings held in Yorkton today, the first annual Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League All-Star Game held here, the first banquet, and the first time such sporting notables have ever been gathered here in Yorkton?
Well, I don't think they could have been bettered, Linus. They were very good. The banquet was excellent, and no one could complain about the All-Star game, certainly in the Yorkton Arena tonight. It had everything that most people want in an All-Star game, lots of goals, lots of flashy play, lots of speed. And I think that the 2,000-some-odd fans that were there certainly got their money's worth.
Al Eaton offers an analysis of the game. He was the sports editor of the Prince Albert Herald daily newspaper.
Well, I thought the game was very, very good. And being an all-star game, you'd expect a lot of goals, a lot of fast play. There were very few penalties, only 3. And I thought the line of Yorkton's line of Hicks, Kuryluk, and Marcetta was the outstanding line for Yorkton. And the outstanding line for Humboldt-Melford was Berg, Panagatko, and Van Imp. The all-star team, the number 1 team, was very, very weak on defense, and they certainly missed Ralph Keller, their all-star defenseman, and centerman Poland Kurtenbach.
Elmer Lang, who had a plumbing shop in Yorkton, was very much involved in many sports, curling, baseball, hockey in the city, and he was the president of the Terrier junior hockey team at the time.
Here we have a fellow by the name of Elmer Lang. Elmer's done a tremendous job in bringing junior hockey to Yorkton and building up a contending club with the Terriers. What did you think of the proceedings here held in Yorkton today, Elmer?
Oh, I hope everything went over. We certainly did our best to put it over.
Well, you sure did, Elmer, that's for sure.
The hockey game, I didn't see a great deal of it. I was busy at the rink all night. I saw about 10 minutes of the game. It was a good game, all that I saw of it. I was pleased with our one forward line. They were skating well both ways.
Well, thanks a lot, Elmer Lang, the president of the Yorkton Terrier Hockey Association.
Local members of the Yorkton Terrier executive and media: Amos Border, Studebaker dealer, Dr. Stephen Yalnitsky, dentist, Bill Korb, who was a car dealer, and Ken Mayhew, editor, reporter, man about town with the Yorkton Enterprise.
And here's Amos Border, a fellow that, we're keeping pretty busy these days. How are you, Amos?
Very good, Pavon.
What did you think of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League All-Star Game, the banquet, and everything that's happened here in Yorkton today?
I thought everything was magnificent. It was a very lovely game. The crowd was treated to a very good exhibition of fine hockey. We had a lovely banquet. There's a great deal of credit due to Ken Mayhew and Red Hunter for their effort in this behalf.
Well, thanks a lot, Amos. Here's a fellow that's my size, Steve Yaholinsky. How are you this evening, Steve?
Very well, thank you, Linus.
What did you think of the All-Star game and everything?
Well, I think the All-Star game was as good as expected. I don't think as good as any of our league games because I don't think the boys had the heart in it that they would. The game meant something to them. But I think the fans enjoyed it very much.
I think so. 2,000 strong, too, Steve. Thank you very much for your comments and statements. We're going to talk to, I don't believe I've been introduced to this fellow either.
Bill Korb.
Bill Korb, how I'm glad to know you, Bill.
He's very glad to know you.
Fine. I didn't realize that. I just haven't met him yet. What did you think of the way things have been handled here in Yorkton today?
Well, I think it was a very wonderful banquet. I thought the banquet was very well arranged. I feel that all the officials, the comments of all the officials was very wonderful. And it was certainly a very successful banquet, and the hockey game was very enjoyable.
Well, thanks a lot, Bill Korb. And hockey fans, our next guests on the Shepard Adamson Agency All-Star Parade is going to be Ken Mayhew and Bill Hunter. Ken, can we take a few more minutes of your time, please? Ken was the object of presentation, I believe, of a trophy today. Ken, that trophy was presented to the champions of the Midget B hockey competition in honor of you. What comment have you to say on that, on the presentation of the trophy, the All-Star game, the banquet, and the whole proceeding, Ken? Ken is the sports editor of the Yorkton Enterprise and a fellow that's, while he loves hockey and has been behind hockey for many years in Yorkton.
Well, actually, Linus, the cup hasn't been presented, of course, as you know, to any team as yet. It's up for competition this year. I feel very proud and very humble that my Yorkton friends saw fit to host this
trophy, which is a sort of memorial to perpetuate my memory in connection with my part, whatever part it was, little part I played in connection with the SJHL. I think this was a very great day for hockey in Yorkton. I think it's going to help rejuvenate hockey. I think it's going to be the kind of thing that we needed. I think that little lump that we got today is going to spark hockey. At least I hope it will, and we'll get more people into the rinks.
Can you hear many comments of people asking what's wrong with hockey? Well, I believe if we get attendance like this, there's nothing wrong with hockey.
Oh, actually, I think we can have hockey back again. I think it's just one of those things that happens to a business sometimes. It slumps, and hockey's a great game. It's the greatest game there is, and we're going to get all those things ironed out, and still, we're going to play hockey. We're going to have a lot of people come and see us.
Well, thanks a lot, Ken Mayu. Well, hockey fans, that about wraps it up for this evening on the Shepherd Adamson Agency All-Star Parade. And this is Linus Westberg of CJGX. We'd like to take this opportunity in thanking all the sporting notables that we've had on the show this evening and wishing everybody a pleasant good evening.
A final note. I asked Merv about a story about Bill Hunter that I had heard many years ago. Is it an urban myth? Did it happen or did it not? Inquiring minds would like to know, but you'll have to draw your own conclusions.
The story I heard about Bill Hunter when he was here in that year, I always assumed he was affiliated with senior hockey somehow. But the story goes that Amos Border donated a Studebaker for a draw that they sold tickets on for the team. And the story goes that Bill, when he left town, left with the money. And that story has been going around for a long time.
I won't remark on that at all because Bill never did anything bad to me. They were promoters, those guys, so you could believe almost anything they did. Bill, like I say, he treated me well. But the story was around and it's lived and it's still living.
Still living.
Yeah, and I say that it was going on from day one.
Well, apparently the raffle took place and Amos donated the Studebaker. He had the Studebaker dealership.
Yes, he did.
But the team didn't get the money, and of course, the team only lasted the 1 year anyway.
But that is an ongoing story. Bill was Bill. He made sure everything was okay when Calgary called me up to go play there after the season was over. So he made sure everything was all done. I was paid up and all that stuff. And so Bill looked after me well, and where I went. Like I say, all kinds of stories about those guys.
They were promoters, and they were good at promoting themselves as well.
Oh, well, that's all I say. That they were interested in both hockey and money. And they were good. They knew their hockey and knew their promotion. It was a good time. But I remember it was all right. No problem.
Watch for and listen to another podcast next month. Visit yorktonstories.ca to hear this and all previous podcasts. And there you can also sign up to our email list so we can let you know when a new episode is available. Our thanks again to our presenting sponsors, Harvest Meats and Grain Millers, and our supporting sponsors. They are Micar Group of Companies, Micar Aerial, Good Spirit Air Service, and Flin Flon Aircraft Maintenance, Baker Tilly in Yorkton and Saskatoon, providing tax advisory and assurance services, optometrists, doctors Popick and Keynes and Associates in Yorkton, and Haas Nissan, providing sales and service on East Broadway across the intersection from the mall. Thanks for listening. Your comments and suggestions are always welcome. Get in touch through our website or by emailing Dick, D-I-C-K, at yorktonstories.ca. Join us again next month for more Yorkton Stories.